Over the last 10 years, I've sold over $200 million of services online. But the sales techniques that I use are never found in the corporate world or some cookie cutter sales training program. So here are the dark psychology sales techniques that I've used across 20 different industries to close tens of millions of dollars ethically. I'm going to start with the darkest, and then I'm going to work my way up to the most powerful. But the thing is, if you just implement one of these things from this video, you could close 10, 20, 30% more sales, which is thousands, if not millions of dollars over your career. So let's start with number one. In 1961, Stanley Milgram ran one of the most disturbing experiments that ever come to light. He wanted to know how far would ordinary people go if an authority figure told them to do something. He brought regular people into a room which had a screen in the middle, and on the other side was a person that was actually an actor, and the person that he brought in had a dial in front of them with like 15 volt levels, with the final one being fatal, and it would like 100% kill the person on the other side of the wall. So as the voltage got turned up, the person, the actor, on the other side of the room screamed louder and louder. The person who they brought in off the street did not know that it was an actor. They thought that it was a real person. The person they brought off the street was sat with a guy in a lab coat who had a clipboard in front of him, and he was just telling them to turn up the voltage. That's it. And he just said one thing: the experiment requires you to continue. And guess what? 65% of participants turned the dial all the way up to fatal. Now, why the hell does this matter for sales? Okay, people are hardwired to follow and listen to authority figures. When you go to the doctors and they say you need this procedure, you don't go, let me think about it. You schedule it, you listen to them because they're the authority. On sales calls, if you're asking permission or constantly seeking approval, trying to make friends, then you've already lost. But when you show up like a professional with congruence, with certainty, prospects are naturally going to follow your lead. The Milgram experiment proved that authority isn't just about expertise. It's about how you carry yourself and the frame that you hold. So ask yourself this: are you actually showing up as an authority on sales calls? Are you just another salesperson begging for a close? Now on to the second. And this one requires no training. Literally any idiot can pull this off. However, people who don't master this can literally have a 0% close rate, and it's so simple. The problem is, it feels so uncomfortable that a lot of people just mess it up. And this technique is silence. Nothing special, just shutting the fuck up. And this works in a variety of different scenarios. The first scenario is when you've asked for some sort of decision. So this could be asking someone if they feel like this can get them to where they want to go, or this could be asking for the investment or some other tie down a decision. And after you've asked for this decision, then you should be silent straight away. Another time when using silence is if you want to challenge a prospect. So maybe they've said something that isn't congruent to the other aspects of the sales call. For instance, something doesn't align with what they said earlier. And you might say something like, really? And just sit in silence. And the third scenario would be if someone gives you a real surface level response. So maybe they've said something that is really flat and you want them to expand on it. So you'll sit there in silence, and naturally, because it's so uncomfortable, they will be motivated to fill that space with more information. Now, the third technique is pain extraction. Imagine you got a tiny little splinter in your finger, but you can't really get it out on your own. Would you pay to get that removed? Like, how much would you pay? Would you pay anything at all? You probably wouldn't, right? You'd probably just leave it and let it fall out on its own. You wouldn't go to the doctors or anything like that. But what if you drilled a nail all the way through your hand, through your bone? You'd go to the nearest medical professional as soon as possible and potentially pay them anything to remove it and get rid of the pain. And this urgency is a similar level of urgency that we want to foster in the prospect through our questioning. And the way that you do that is by understanding what a surface level response looks like. So if you were selling marketing solutions and someone said, I just want more leads. Or if you're selling some business opportunity or a career opportunity and people say, well, I'm not earning enough money. Or if you're selling a weight loss program and someone says, I'm overweight. These are all surface level responses. These are essentially the splinter. In order for that to all of a sudden seem like the nail through the bone, we do this by asking layered questions. And I teach something called the staircase method, which is my way of questioning that digs below that surface level by asking probing questions. And probing questions allow surface level problem to become a real pain and then to become an emotion. So we do that by asking things like, why is that a problem? How long has that been a problem for? Who else is this a problem for? What's that been like for you personally? What's that been feeling like? What's the impact of that? These are all probing questions that are going to build the pain. And the fourth technique can be using stories. We as humans have relied on stories to pass down information forever. The truth is a lot stickier in story. So if you can try and make a point through telling a story, whether that's a case study, but even better if it can just be like a moving story, that can help you to overcome objections and help people to overcome limiting beliefs. So let's say someone says something like, oh, I'm not sure if it works, I don't know if it works for me. You could tell a story or an analogy like this. You could say, when was the last time you went on vacation? And they might say, earlier this year. And you might say, when you stepped on that plane, did you know with complete certainty that it wasn't going to crash? And they'll say, well, no, I didn't know that. I didn't know with complete certainty. And you will ask them, what did you risk it with? That might add a bit of confusion. So you might have to tell them, well, you risked it with your life ultimately, because for certain you didn't know that it was going to crash. But essentially you risked your life, a very small risk, because on the other side of it, there was an enjoyable vacation for you to have with your friends or your family. We ultimately take calculated risks all the time, every day. And this is where you reframe them. So you'll say, if on the other side of this, you achieve X, Y, Z result, depends what you're selling, would this perceived risk seem worth it to you? And they'll say, yeah, if I was definitely going to get the result. And that's where you'd say, yeah, exactly. But that's what trips most people up, because you'll never actually get the result if you don't take that first step on the plane. And the fifth technique here is objection prevention. One of the worst things you can try and do as a salesperson is try to tell someone that their opinion is wrong, especially at the end of the call, after you've already given them the price, they give their opinion and you're trying to persuade them otherwise. Top 1% closers do not do this. They try to prevent or at least minimize objections way earlier in the call. Through questioning in the discovery, they identify what the objection could potentially be. And they do this by a few key aspects. The first is that they get a really clear outcome. And what that clear outcome and desired state allows them to do and what it feels like, really tie it into that strong desired outcome. Then the second is we need to find out everything that they've tried so far. And it's important to get all the details here, not just surface level shit. Then we need to basically ask them a question that's going to hit a bit hard. And we'll say, if you've wanted X, Y, Z outcome, desired state for the amount of time that they've wanted it for, why do you feel like it hasn't happened yet? Now, we need to wait for the response here, because people are going to do one of two things. People are either going to blame it on external circumstances. A lot of people do. They're like, I haven't had the time, I haven't had the opportunity, blah, blah, blah. Or some people will start taking internal responsibility right away. But the key here is to take them from blaming things on external circumstances and figuring out internally what's held them back. And guess what? When we look at what's held people back internally, it's always going to be fear, hesitation, not taking action, and that sort of thing, which are going to be the same things that happen in the objection process. So by handling them here in the discovery process, when it rears its head again later in the call, it's much weaker. It might not be fully neutralized, but it's going to be so much weaker because we've helped them to overcome it in the discovery process. And the sixth point feeds into this, and it's going to make you do it so much better. The easiest way to offer people what they want is to give them what they need. We find out what they need by digging into their deepest desires, not just where they want to be next week or what they want to fix. It's more about what that allows them to do. How does that change things for them? How does it maybe change things for the family? What would that be like to actually achieve that? The aim through future pacing is allowing the prospect to actually feel that experience and sit with that emotion of actually achieving X, Y, Z, whatever they've come on the call to achieve, how that changes things for them. Once we tie them into that emotion, it's key that we tie them into an emotion here. That is going to make the whole sale process so much easier, because maybe for the first time they've actually thought that it's possible. And now on to the seventh and potentially one of the most powerful techniques here, and this is identity activation. Average sales reps think people want to buy things because that helps them fix a problem, or maybe just to give them a certain outcome like a better body or to earn a bit more money. But what they fail to consider is why people want those things. And often when we go a level deeper, it's because those outcomes allow a person to become the person they want to be. So often people want more money so they can be proud of themselves and be this wealthy, knowledgeable entrepreneur. Or people want a better body because they want to be a Gymshark athlete and be perceived better by the opposite sex. And it's this identity that they want more than anything else. And there's a very simple way that I can give you here that's going to open the doors to a way of selling via identity. And when you're going through the desire-based questioning and figuring out what someone wants, a simple question like, who does this allow you to become, is going to open these floodgates into this identity that the person wants to become. And then throughout the call, we're going to label that version of them. So we'll say things like, this version of you that is able to do that. And we're separating this aspirational identity from the current identity. And by doing this, we can start to tie different aspects through a sales call into this aspirational identity and the choices that this aspirational identity makes, the things that this aspirational identity does differently to what they're doing now, and this is going to change the way they make decisions. Another great way to tap into identity psychology is by asking a question that basically splits people's identity into different parts. And you can do this with 2 different identities, you can do it with 3, but ultimately we want to give some examples of people who the prospect does not want to be like, an overarching trait or a character that they do want to be like. So then we can tie decisions into these people. So let's say we were selling trading education. Okay, let's say our prospects were aspiring Forex traders. We might ask a question like, there are 3 kinds of people when it comes to trading. The first is people who just wing it. These are people that watch a couple of YouTube videos, think they know it all, and they're essentially glorified gamblers. And I'm sure you know people like that, right? We get the nod. And then there's like the dabblers. There's the people in between who they've got a little bit of coaching here and there. They committed on some weeks, other weeks they aren't. Maybe they've stuck to one strategy for a while but never really seen it through, and they also don't really get the result that they want, and they often come to me 2 or 3 years down the line after dabbling for so long and just wishing that they took action sooner. And then the third kind of person is those who are committed to mastery, to excellence, and these are the people that ultimately become elite traders. These stick to a plan, a process, a format and a strategy, and they tick all the boxes. They've actually committed to making this work. And what I see a lot of the time is people spend 2, 3, 4 years in those first 2 kinds of people, and they're always dabbling, not taking it that serious, and then they come to me 2 or 3 years down the line when they've potentially already left hundreds of thousands on the table. I guess from your perspective, what's made you not want to be like those people? And all of a sudden, through asking questions like this, you're tying someone into a certain identity. The identity of a person that takes action, that takes things seriously, and also doesn't dabble and waste time and takes action. Now, they're my 7 dark sales techniques that you can apply to any industry. It doesn't matter what you're in, but by implementing these allow you to tap into certain psychological levers and sell anything ethically. If you want to learn more sales techniques like this, and you want some real guidance and mentorship, and you also want help landing a high-paying remote sales role, then below this video there should be a link to schedule a call with me, or just drop me a DM on Instagram and we can chat on there. I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Ciao.